Avengers Endgame is one of the most ambitious stories to come out in 2026, and there's a reason why. Marvel is coming back, and they're coming back with a bang with this story. Well, is it really going to be a banger? Because to be honest with you, I don't really think so. And that's not because, oh, Robert Downey Jr. has been casted as Doom. As a matter of fact, I'd be lying if I said that I was excited for that, because I'm not. As a matter of fact, I'm not really excited for any of the most recent casting announcements. If anything, it makes me scared. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Doctor Doom deserves the bad end of the stick because he decided to take over the Kang Dynasty spot for 2026 most ambitious villain. However, Doctor Doom has had little to no character development compared to Kang. And as much as we don't really want to say that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania exists, unfortunately it does. And unfortunately it did set up that aspect of the MCU. Same thing with Loki, even though Loki season 1 and 2 was actually the better of what we should have gotten as a catalyst for the Kang Dynasty. But unfortunately, none of the MCU's projects had even comparatively enough set up anything or anything remotely close to some kind of multiverse, threat happening. And I know a lot of people would probably argue and say that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness set that up. However, that's not necessarily the case at all, because Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness barely even set anything up, but just, kind of gave us the payoff that we deserve to have at the end of WandaVision. However, that still wasn't necessarily as good of a movie as I wanted it to be. Now, I can sit here and rant all day long about the Avengers and all day long about what they failed to do, but there's been countless videos already talking about, the MCU, the fall of the MCU, the rise of the new MCU, the MCU, how they stole my baby, the MCU, how they kidnapped my grandmother and held her at gunpoint and asked for $1 million ransom signed by Kevin Feige. There's been just way too many things going on with the MCU, but I just want to focus and shift the focus on Doctor Doom specifically. Now, Doctor Doom is one of my all time favorite comic book characters, like literally just of all time, I should say, because Doctor Doom is he's just evil. Yeah, there's some kind of romance between him and Sue that he got jealous of Reed Richards. But if you actually read some of the comics back in the olden days, it's a little bit more personal than just, oh, Reed and Sue are together and I'm jealous. A lot of the more modern comics and movies like to say that that's the case as to why Doom is jealous of Reed, but let's just be honest, if they would just stop doing that whole shtick, I think you can really flesh this villain out to be a great one. And for those of you who don't really know the true origin story of Doctor Doom, it's because, well, him and Reed Richards went to college together, and while they were trying to research some kind of quantum physics or something, um, Reed's project went wrong and kind of left Doctor Doom's face disfigured. But Reed still became the successful one, and Victor Von Doom didn't become as successful. So, using some of Reed's knowledge, he went back to Latveria and used that and started doing really horrible things to the country, and actually took over the country with his Doombots. So that's kind of the gist of what Doctor Doom is. So essentially, Doctor Doom is just a power hungry guy who just wants more power. He wants to be in control of just about everything. As a matter of fact, a lot of the old comic books see Doctor Doom as more of somebody who only teams up with the Avengers to face a bigger threat because he just wants to absorb that threat's power. For instance, in Infinity Gauntlet, he only teams up with the Avengers just so he can get the Infinity Gauntlet. And at one point, he's almost successful before Thanos completely fucking eradicates him. So that's why I'm kind of hoping that Avengers Doomsday has Doom's thirst for power, more or less as a motive, more than, oh, there's too many multiverses and I need to stop them. Because then at that point, you're just making Doctor Doom another Thanos, which that actually is what scared me the most. And these are two completely different villains, two completely different motives. One villain wanted to wipe out half the universe because there's too many resources, or there's not enough resources and too many people to have said resources. The other is a power hungry fool who just wants to take control of everything and bend the entire universe to his will. But why stop at one universe when you can have the multiverse? Is basically what Doctor Doom's motives are. Will they interpret that inside of Doomsday? I don't know. And just by the way the MCU has a track record, I don't really think they're going to do that. And the thing is that Doctor Doom is just one of those characters where you can't really have any redemption for him. He's not a character that needs redeeming. And that's the thing about Doctor Doom as to why makes him everyone's favorite supervillain. It's because he is the catalyst of the supervillain. He is the guy who has a castle, who has his minions, who has a really threatening, mask. He sits in a throne. Like, this guy is literally the all-time favorite supervillain of everybody. Like, this guy is the villain. When you think of the word supervillain, that's who you think of. I mean, his name is literally Dr. Doom. Like, he is a villain. So I don't really want some kind of like origin story that makes him sad and relatable and redeemable, and say people say, oh well, he just is just trying to survive, or he's just doing this for his country. Because realistically speaking, Doctor Doom has not been able to be redeemed in not a single comic book that I have read to this day. And I know what you're thinking, but Jules, this isn't the comics, this is the MCU. Yeah, and that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. The MCU has made some of these villains that, I really like into more fleshed out characters that can be redeemed, just so that way they don't have an excuse to throw them in jail or kill them. Which, to be quite honest with you, I don't really agree with villains being killed. I would love to see villains showing up more in different projects, just like in the comic books, but hey, that's just beyond me. And I would argue that there are some villains who have redeeming qualities about them because, well, they're just, product of their own misfortune. However, those villains usually belong to Spider-Man, and we'll get onto that in another video. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, this is what really is scaring me about Avengers Doomsday. It's not the fact that you have a character that's underdeveloped or not really mentioned at all, because I have a feeling that, just a small hunch that he might show up inside of Fantastic Four. He might show up at the end of Thunderbolts. And if not, then he's definitely showing up at least in any other MCU project, because, well, they kind of have to at this point. Because, you've already announced that he's going to be returning. You already announced him as the villain. You might as well just have him show up, just to show people, this is my power, this is what I'm going to do, and this is exactly how I'm going to do it. Just so that way we can shut a lot of the fanboys up about, oh, he's very underdeveloped. He hasn't even shown up in a single MCU project. And that's kind of the point. I would actually argue that a lot of villains don't really show up developed inside the comics. Sometimes some villains just show up with all this power and they're just a threat that they just have to stop. That's the whole point of sometimes of being a villain. You don't have to set them up as to be this big overarching person. You see, as long as they do go the route in the comics where Doctor Doom is taking over the universe and kind of creating his own battle world, like in the recent Secret Wars comics, then you're fine. Honestly, you're truly fine. But what I don't want happening is Doctor Doom being a Tony Stark variant. That is what I don't want happening. And here's why. Because you see, the whole reason why a lot of people are saying that Tony Stark shouldn't be Doctor Doom is because we've seen this character and we've seen his arc come to a close. Why would you bring him back just so that way he can be evil? Just so that way we can have a message about, oh, this is just, a bizarro version of Tony who turns bad. Which that's not what everyone wants to see. Everyone wants to see Victor Von Doom. And I know the Russo brothers and Disney and Marvel keep coming out and saying, no, this is Victor Von Doom. We promise this is Victor Von Doom. Exactly how will this be Victor Von Doom is my question. Because this could very much be an instance where the only thing similar to Victor Von Doom in the comics and Victor Von Doom in Avengers Doomsday is that they just have the same exact name, but completely different character traits and completely different motives. For instance, what a lot of people are saying through quote-unquote leaks and rumors is that this version of Doctor Doom is a version of Tony Stark who failed and became very angry at the fact that he failed, and so he just wants to prove to everyone that he's good. Which, on paper, that sounds like that sounds like Doctor Doom, right? However, not really. That is still very much Tony Stark. There's another theory going around saying that Doctor Doom is going to kill the Council of Kings, or at least have a reference to him killing the Council of Kings, just so that way they don't have to go back to that. And to that, I say, that's kind of stupid. But also, it could work, maybe. I feel like we should just leave it to be ambiguous. We shouldn't even have to mention any of that because good storytelling just completely glosses over the fact that that has ever happened, you know? I think Quantumania is a really horrible movie. I think it is terrible. I tried to forget about it, just like Disney tries to forget about the fact that Jonathan Majors was actually innocent in the allegations, but we're not going to talk about that. Anyways, so the thing is that I don't understand why we need to even mention the fact that the clone, not the clone, oh my god, the Kang saga was going to be anything, grand and spectacle that we have to mention it because, well, let me just rip the hard band aid off. The Kang saga was not going to even be considered, anything grand or spectacle because, well, if you look at the movies that just came out, why the hell would the Kang saga be this big thing when they weren't even hyping it up to be this big thing? And you can't sit there and tell me that the most recent MCU projects definitely were supposed to set up Kang because I really don't understand how Captain America Brave New World has anything to do with the multiverse. I really don't understand how Daredevil Born Again, I think, was the last one. Gee, I really haven't seen an MCU movie in a long time, huh? So I guess, yeah, Daredevil Born Again. I don't really see how that's supposed to, influence the Kang saga. I don't see how Echo was supposed to influence the Kang saga, She Hulk, Thunderbolts, anything remotely similar that was announced back in 2020, I don't really think was setting up the Kang saga the way people thought it would. And the projects that did kind of hint towards the Kang saga was either a TV show that not many people watched compared to movies because not a lot of people wanted to tune into Disney Plus at the time to watch it, and a movie that was below average that is actually I actually would much rather watch Thor 2 than Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And to those of you who know who I am, know I would never say that phrase in my entire life. And yes, I am blinking twice because I'm being held hostage. Anyway, but if you really look at a lot of the quote unquote multiverse saga movies, there's not really a single one that will ever tie into Kang. Not even Deadpool and Wolverine tied into Kang the Conqueror. If anything, Deadpool and Wolverine was its own thing, and I would argue within still the Fox universe. It wasn't really an MCU movie like it said it was going to be. The only thing Deadpool and Wolverine share with the MCU is the fact that the TVA kidnaps Deadpool, and Deadpool kind of just uses a time machine to go around trying to get different variants of Wolverine. That is the only MCU thing I can think about for Deadpool and Wolverine. Other than that, it was still very much a Marvel Fox movie, mixed in with the little, classic Marvel stuff like Blade and whatnot. Anyway, moving on. So, bottom of the line is what I'm trying to make here is that Kang wasn't necessarily the overarching villain that everyone thought it was going to be, and if anything, it was actually Madam Hydra, surprisingly. If you look at a lot of the projects, Madam Hydra was hinting at a Thunderbolts team up, and well, whenever we have the Thunderbolts now, a lot of people seem to forget about the project that these guys come from. If anything, the only thing everyone wants to see the Thunderbolts for is Yelena and Bucky, and that's just about it. Which I'm honestly very much kind of optimistic about it. I'm seeing the Thunderbolts this Thursday, thankfully, and yes, I will be having a review out about it. However, when you look at that, how would that even remotely tie into what Kang the Conqueror has to do with the multiverse? So, and I guess going back to the point that I'm trying to make here is that you don't really need a developed villain to sit here and be Mr. High and Mighty, Mr. I'm going to destroy the multiverse, Mr. Hey, you get off my cloud. The thing about it is, as long as the villain is compelling and as long as you follow in what makes this villain beloved in the first place, you can easily just have Dr. Doom not even be mentioned or not even show up in any of these future projects. You can just have him just show up in Doomsday and start fucking shit up. But, however, that goes to show that if you're going to try to make something out of Doctor Doom, why not make him the catalyst from the comics that a lot of people know and love? Why have to make him destroy the Council of Kangs just to show how powerful he is? Why not just, why not just, I don't want to say tell, but why not just, show him how powerful he is by having him take on this new lineup of heroes that we have going against him, have him win, and then create Secret Wars, create Battle World, so that way we can finally have the Secret Wars we deserve. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole Doctor Doom fiasco with Avengers Secret Wars. I could have gone on about, the different aspects of the multiverse saga, but again, everything that needed to be said about the MCU has already been said by a lot of other YouTubers just like me, so I'm not really going to get into that today. What I am going to get into is letting you guys know that the movie that I'm currently working on is still in development, and I'm actually looking for people to help out with it. I'm not looking for money. I'm mostly looking for anybody who has a hand in theater or film that wants to try to boost their luck inside making this movie a reality. I'm not necessarily worried about casting actors, mostly focus on casting editors and casting anyone who might be interested in furthering their film degree. If it is, and if you know me personally, please don't be afraid to reach out. But other than that, I hope to see you guys next week, and stay tuned for this Friday night as I will be getting an Avengers. Oh my god, not Avengers. I will be getting a Thunderbolts review out to you guys shortly. Thank you.